Hello and welcome to the final setup video for the TEXTIMAL's final project. Today we are going to do a watch and then try video. So I'd like for you to have your full attention up on the board watching these important instructions, and then you'll have time to work. Now the first step is to print out 2 copies of your final draft layout from Canva. You'll print those and you can leave the grid lines in, but know that we are not tracing the grid lines. That's mostly just to help us see the rule of thirds and if we've followed it or not. So you can print this with or without that grid because we are not tracing that. Now you are going to take one of your copies and you're going to put masking tape along that top edge. We want it to be almost the length of your paper, not quite, so make sure it's not longer than your paper. We're going to take your edge, your top edge, and we are just going to place that masking tape so that it lays nice and flat. Now press it down so that we don't have any bubbles, and then we're gonna lift it up and we're gonna turn it over. Now you are going to select your final color of paper, and once you've chosen your paper, which this is orange, so that means that I could take a look at my color scheme menu, and any color scheme that has the color orange in it, that means I could use that color scheme on this paper. But your color scheme that you're choosing to draw your animal with should match the paper that you are working on. Now, once you've decided on your final color that you'd like for your paper, you are going to take that and you're going to just line it up by tapping on the table, and then we're just gonna hold this edge down with our thumbs. We're gonna fold it over from the center and push out. All right, now that gives us what we are gonna call our hinge that we can lift and lower. From here, you are going to take your piece of carbon paper, and remember that it is the darker, shinier side that goes face down. Now, something you should keep in mind is that if we are working on this and I'm drawing and I'm applying pressure while I'm drawing, that will transfer with the pressure of your hand. So if I'm like applying too much pressure, it will actually leave like finger smudges and marks. So what I want you to do, we are going to start on one edge and you are going to use a number 2 pencil. So we are working with these because they are harder leaded pencils and they won't break as much and they won't dull as quickly. Now what we're going to do is go through and trace every single line, and I'd like for you to start at an edge and notice that my hand is resting on the side. Now I'm going to keep turning my paper so that I can have my hand resting on the table rather than on the paper, because we want to avoid putting too much pressure on our paper with our fingers, because that's gonna leave little finger smudges on the actual background. Now, something you can do as you are working is take an extra piece of masking tape, put that on the tape edge, and you can use that to prevent it from like moving around so that I don't have to hold down with my hand quite so hard. Now, not only are we going to trace all of the lines and details, but I'd like to show you how we are going to use this carbon paper to shade or to begin shading our animals. Now what we're going to do, anywhere where you see solid black, like a 10 level value, we are going to fill that in with our 2B pencil until it's shiny. Now in areas that fade, like this, where it's going from dark to medium to light, I'm going to do that with my pencil too. So I'm going to press hard, and then I'm gonna press lighter and lighter and lighter. Now let's try that again. I'm gonna press hard and then lighter and lighter and lighter. And let's check how our progress is going. And you can see our shading is showing up. Now when you lift your page, it will show you which parts you're missing. So I'm still missing the inside lines on this W. That's why we only tape it on one edge so that we can lift and lower to see what it is that we still need to come through and add. So you are going to trace all of your details, and for another example of letters, I was working on a 3D letter there, but let me show you what you'll do with just a typical letter like this. We want to show the entire thickness of the letters so that you have the option of coloring them in. So we are going to outline the entire edge of all of your letters so that when you lift, you have the option of coloring them in. So we're gonna go through and trace all of our letters so that we've got the outside edges. Now, when you're done with your text, and that's where I would recommend beginning so that you can kind of get the hang of it before you're moving on to the final details, then you're going to switch into working on your animals. Now, I would like to show you what my example looks like so far. This one I've been working on for a little bit longer, so I am just going to take this and show you how far we've gotten. So what we're doing with the animals, we are going to outline and fill in all of the areas that are going to be dark. And we're doing this to help ourselves identify which of those 3 colors we're going to use to fill it in when we're in the coloring phase. So I'd like to go through this section just briefly with you to show you what we are focused on during the animal coloring phase. Now, if you see an area that is a 10 value, so a number 10 is like black, then we are going to fill that in, and you want to use really heavy pressure. You want to make sure that you're filling it in so that when we lift it, we can see where we're going to come in with our darkest color. Now again, we're trying to avoid having too much pressure from our hands. Like, we don't want to set down here where there's not anything in the background and accidentally make fingerprints. Now, not only are we filling in the black, but we are also outlining all of the white. So for example, in a section like this, where I have like a light area fading out, let me zoom in here so you can really see what I'm talking about. This light area, I wouldn't want to come out and like outline fully, because we wouldn't want like a dark outline where it's fading to get lighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade in around that space and kind of show myself that shape by kind of outlining it with light pressure and light value, so that when I lift this up, I can kind of see that isolated space that's left behind, and I'll know that that is where my lighter values will go. So here is what that looks like. So we can see right where that highlight is going to go, and we're not actually outlining it because we don't want to have a dark outline around the areas that are light. So you are giving yourselves the border with value for things that are white, and things that are dark, we are going to fill in completely. Now, one of the biggest, most important things that you should know as you are working on this step is that this is the money phase. Like, this is where you make or break your project, really. And it really is determined by whether you are willing to take the time to fill this in correctly and to show what you actually see. Now, in mine, you can sort of see this little section right here is a light transition. So I'm going to give myself just kind of an outline, and then I'm going to fill in the rest around it to be solid black. And I'm going to leave that little space so that I know that that is where it starts to transition and get lighter. So I've got it dark, and then I've got the space that's not quite black, but I'm going to come in and give it a nice light shading so I don't think that it's supposed to be too light. Now I am just going to go through, and anything that's black I'm completely covering, and any detail that I am trying to include I need to trace over. Now this should be a complete drawing by the end, essentially. That means that when we lift this up, it should be fully shaded already. Now, I still have a lot of work to go because a lot of this space in the back is really dark. So I am going to be going through and still shading this in so that it matches that value, and so that I know exactly where to put all of my colors. Now, we are going to bring in our value scale finder, which looks like this. Now, I have orange in my color scheme because that is the color of paper that I chose. Now, although I am not completely finished with my layout, I am still going to show you the next steps for when you are finished. Now, we have our value finder and our second photo. let's leave this picture taped on until the very last day. And I'm just gonna fold that backwards so that I have access to both of my images. Now, what we're going to do first, we are going to come in and fill in our darkest color at the beginning. And we are just covering up any of those dark areas. And then we're gonna fade out in the areas that are getting lighter. So we're going to come in and fade out. Now, I am just, oh, sorry, you couldn't quite see that. I am gonna zoom in and just do this first letter so that you can have an idea of what I am looking for. So here's our first letter. I'm going to come in and just kind of bring this down a little bit. We don't have any shading on these sides, so I'm just gonna leave it. Now I'm going to come in with my blue, and this is my medium tone, so it goes for me dark indigo blue, aquamarine, and then orange. So now I'm gonna fade this out, and I'm gonna bring in orange right here at the base. Ooh, that's fun. Okay. Now notice that I colored in very solidly. We do not want any light coloring on this. It should be all completely solidly filled in, including your textural lines. Now I am gonna go through and add white to the front of my W. And then we want to cover up all of the carbon lines as well. So because I have this line still showing, I am gonna take my darker color and just outline with that color once I've colored everything in. And that's gonna make these lines nice and slick and smooth rather than outlining and then coloring. So I am gonna go through and outline all of my details. And that would be an example of how we can fill in one of our letters. Now, you can think through if you want to have your letters be specific colors so that they stand out against your background. So for example, on these letters, maybe I'll make them like this aquamarine so that they stand out. Or I could come back and do the letters after I have colored in my animals to see what color I am short on, like which color I don't have as much of. Now let's switch into working on an animal, and I am going to have you just watch the eye of this little guy here. So we are going to get started by coloring in the solid black with our darkest color. I'm just coming through and adding that. Now we come in with our white next. I'm adding that little highlight. Now I'm gonna come in with my medium tone and add my lighter values. And then I'm going to do what's called burnishing with this lightest color. And that means I'm going to color super hard over the top of this space. And then I'm gonna come in with a little bit of white and use that to blend it and make it just a touch lighter. Now I am going to be looking at this image directly next to it, and I folded it so that it's as close as I can get it to my picture. Now I'm gonna take this blue, and I see that it's pretty dark through here. I notice though that I'm missing this little line. So one of the great things about leaving your picture taped on is that I can flip this right over, put my carbon paper back in, take my pencil, my number 2 pencil, and draw in that line so that I can see right where that edge needs to be. Now I am gonna come back in and I'm gonna start adding some of my white. And you can do this in the order that we practiced with our tiger practice. So you could come through and do all of your solid black areas and then fade to all of your white areas next, and then you would be filling with your medium tones. But I do personally kind of like to go by like one section at a time. So now I've kind of filled this in dark blue. Oh, I hope you could see that, sorry. Now I'm going to bring this over with my lighter blue, and I'm just filling in that center. Now once you have added the medium tone color and kind of filled it in a little bit more, then you can come back through with that dark color and really like help the transition to be nice and smooth. So we always start with our darker color, then come in with our lighter color, and then we can use our lighter color to kind of make the background nice and slick, and then we can come back through with our dark to blend out. Now, I am just gonna go through and continue adding my values one section at a time, but the most important things to remember are, first of all, to have your reference photo folded and as close to your image as possible. Next, I highly recommend having your value finder out so that if you're ever unsure of which color it should be, I can see that it fades to aquamarine here, but it is actually the indigo blue right through here, right? So then it tells me which color to use. Isn't that so cool? Now, we want to make sure that it is filled in completely solidly in all areas, including your lines. So make sure that you have taken care of that step, and come and ask me if you've got any questions. But at this point, you are just going through and matching the values of what you see on your animal onto your final draft. I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for watching.